the Zoom meeting tonight takes issues involving our wastewater treatment plant very seriously. In fact, I personally take them so seriously that I've had this as a discussion item on every council agenda for probably the last 18 months. And we've talked in great detail about problems we've had with the Nova filters, the fact that we have a number of RBC units down, but we're working expeditiously to get them back online. And we've also talked in recent months about UV light and properly treating the effluent before it's discharged. To echo some of the comments that Mr. Gearbaugh said, I would prefer to meet until after we have a comprehensive memo from the city's attorney's office and subsequent to staff meeting with Eagle to discuss some of these issues, because I think there's some misunderstandings and some conclusions that the state regulators have made that are not accurate. However, the chair will be happy to entertain or will be happy to respond to the majority of council, or in this case, it's just 2 members who would like to have a meeting. But I would like to hear from everybody on this. Mr. Gearbaugh, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, you're quite familiar with these issues in large part because of your long tenure on council, but also because I've sort of made you the point person on this of late, participating in a conference call with Councilwoman Dillon on Friday. Are there any thoughts you would like to share?
That's kind of the reason why we have our attorneys, is that we ask them for input and understanding what we're doing and going forward. I do not have a problem with having a meeting, but I believe we need to understand from the perspective of what is the state asking, and what are we responsible for, and what are we actually doing. I think they have been approaching this since back in September, October, December, when we first started approaching these discussions with the state regarding any of the Adelina Farms expansion. So there's a lot of background and information to which we need to have all that put in front of us, and I would rather wait until it's documented and given to us in a way that is appropriate, and for all of us on council to properly have the same information. I think there's some information and ideas right now that may not be fully understood from perspectives of what we've been, presented in the last few months and so forth, and that I think we've had, but maybe not all of us have read, or maybe have not all had the ability to understand how the issues proceeded. So at this point, it makes more sense to make sure that we all have a clear understanding, not speculate until we know exactly what the state wants of us, what we need, and whatever else is prevalent.
Okay. Thank you. Councilwoman Dillon, your thoughts?
Well, I am conflicted. I think there needs to be an aspect of transparency and public awareness of this issue. I do completely understand our legal counsel's position that there are aspects of this that need to stay confidential at this point. So trying to find that line as to where we can provide adequate information to all of council as well as to the public without crossing the line as to confidential material. So as far as the work meeting is concerned, I think the purpose was to ascertain a complete timeline of what was going on, what the plan of action was to that point, and and some other impacts of were these this matters considered in these other projects. So I think that's what the other council members are questioning. So I do think there are a lot of questions that do not fall within the scope of confidentiality, and that may come to light and better understanding as a group in some sort of a work meeting, with the understanding that there is a level to which we could not discuss.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember CO?
I guess I'm concerned that I don't know what I don't know. We've been assured over the time that, yes, there have been violations, but yet they're within the confines allowed, I think, by Eagle for the kind of operation that we run. I do know that the attorneys have been working with Eagle to try to come to some kind of an understanding and a consent agreement. And I would hate, like Councilwoman Dillon says, to threaten the confidentiality of any kinds of those discussions that are going on between the attorneys and Eagle, and thus upset the apple cart there. I guess I would say that I do have trust in the staff of the city in providing us with the information that we need to perform our jobs both adequately and legally. And I, like Councilwoman Dillerman, conflicted about what to do at this juncture. Perhaps we should have a meeting in closed session with the attorneys to try and clarify some of these issues. Beyond that, I would have nothing to offer.
Okay. Thank you. Councilwoman Mitchell, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Your Honor. The information that I'm interested in has nothing to do with moving forward and how things are negotiated. I think that's properly with the attorneys. I'm more concerned that the information that I have is not equal to the information that, for example, you have, or the information that Councilmember CO has, or Councilmember Dillon. I think we need a work meeting similar to that of the Fairdean work meeting. And that meeting had to be called in the same manner too, because we just wanted to understand the Fairdean contract. We didn't want to comment on anything else. The attorney was in the room, is what I remember, and once or twice cautioned city council members to wait for another time. I would not be in favor of a closed session whatsoever, because I think that we have had enough of that. Whatever information can be discussed in public as far as past events needs to be discussed in public. They have a right to know. As I said, I'm very indebted to Representative Donna Lazinski for her advice. I would be very supportive of having a work meeting under the same circumstances that we did in the Fairdean agreement. Thank you.
Mr. Delorco, anything you'd like to add? Obviously, you stated your position pretty clearly, but I'll provide you an opportunity if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize that closed sessions deliberations should be limited to ongoing negotiations with legal staff pertaining to the administrative consent order, exclusively for that purpose. That's moving forward in terms of arriving at legal as to how to go forward. As Councilwoman Mitchell pointed, we're interested in is bringing forward the permit violations that have accrued over the entire year of 2019, one in March, one in September. The public deserves to be brought into the discussion. The public has a right to know what's going on. And I want to make it abundantly clear that there is nothing ambiguous about permit violations levied by Eagle. That is a quantitative measure. The NPTS permitting requirements are quantitative. We have not met those permitting requirements, and there is nothing ambiguous about those allegations.
Mr. Kamara-Sulek, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I think we should listen to science. And I appreciate what Mr. Delorco has said. And I also emphasize just, having a discussion so that we all know what's going on and how all these violations came to be and why they have not been resolved. And there's plenty that fall outside the scope of confidentiality. So I don't want it to be masked in that. We need a work meeting so we can discuss it and so that we can make sure we're transparent with the public. And I do not have a misunderstanding of this. I understand that there's information that some council members have and that other council members do not have. And the public definitely does not know enough. And it is our job to serve and be transparent to our citizens. Thank you.
Let me make a few comments because I think there is a little bit of misunderstanding. And for those citizens who may be watching, I want to just be crystal clear about a couple things. As I stated in my opening remarks, reference wastewater treatment plant, we have discussed and spent considerable time and money on issues involving disabled RBCs, UV lights, NOVA filters. That's an issue that staff and council take very seriously, and we need to do more work on that. I'll be very candid, and we need to work aggressively to make sure that those technologies are back online and that we avoid any type of issues with state regulators in the future. I'm willing to broker, I think, a reasonable compromise and work to schedule a work meeting, noting that there are going to be some issues reference wastewater treatment plant, which at the present time need to remain confidential under the attorney-client privilege, but I would recommend maybe adding this as a discussion item on April the 27th when we revisit the proposed 2020-2021 budget. And maybe Mr. Campbell, if you could reach out and see if legal counsel is available, obviously they would be participating via Zoom. I think that would be ideal.
Certainly.
Mr. Gearbaugh, does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes, that's fine. I think it's a good idea to do it that way. At least by then we'll have some information from our attorneys.
Correct. That was part of the genesis as well, is that comprehensive memo from the attorney's office should be complete far in advance of that meeting, giving members ample time to review it and develop questions. Councilwoman Dillon, are you?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
one other point,
Please.
that please remember that the direction of how we're handling this is being directed by the governor, AOC that she's provided, and is at their direction by the state of Michigan. We are not attempting as a city to do something that we are not participating in at any other direction than from the state of Michigan.
Very good. Councilwoman Dillon, are you good with discussing this on the 27th of April in conjunction with our budget?
So would we be starting, like, what's our time frame for this? Is this like we don't designate 6 to 7 for this aspect and then 7